Hey everyone, I'm Cassie. To get started, I want you to think of your most fun friend. Don't say their name out loud, don't point to anybody. Just picture them in your mind. Got it? Good. When I think about my most fun friend, I always think about Andrea. She was this girl in my small group in high school who was always cracking jokes, doing crazy stuff, playing pranks, and making everybody laugh so hard they were gasping for air. She never made fun of people, she just made sure that everybody was having fun. I loved that. In fact, anytime we would sign up for retreats or field trips, I would always scan the list to see if Andrea was going, because if she was there was zero chance of it being boring. Years later, I learned that lots of people did that. In fact, it happened so often that our youth pastors would literally call and ask her to come to events because more people would show up. And what's crazy is that Andrea had zero idea she had that kind of effect on people. She was just being herself. I'm guessing you probably have a friend like that, somebody who has a huge effect on the people around them, whether they know it or not. Maybe you know somebody that is so fun to be around that everybody wants to hang out with them, is so nice they literally make you want to be a nicer person, or work so hard that his or her teammates work harder because of them. Or maybe it's the opposite. You know somebody who's ruthless with their comebacks, so other people always feel on edge around them, is always annoyed about something, so they kind of bring down the mood. Or they're so loud that people literally have to shout to talk over them. No one really feels heard when they talk to them, and so they don't really want to hear them out. Whether it's a good or a not so good effect, here's what's true about people who have a significant effect on others. They probably don't really think about it. They either don't realize that they have an effect, or they haven't really thought about how they could effectively use their influence. That's what makes this series both exciting and a little tricky. Over the next few weeks, we're talking about something called the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect is the idea that small actions, even seemingly insignificant ones, can set off a chain reaction that creates major outcomes. A butterfly flaps its wings, and on the other side of the world, it leads to something much bigger. In other words, we're talking about impact and influence. Not the get a million followers kind of influence, but the kind that starts small and grows bigger than you ever imagined. For some of you, your influence is obvious. Maybe you hold some type of leadership position, either at church, school, on your team, at your job, or even in your household. Maybe you have a social media account that's well followed, and people come to your page to hear what you think, see what you do, or see what you're wearing. Or you just understand that people listen to you and almost always take your opinion seriously. Whether it's about something serious like who to date, or something random like which TikTok sound is irrelevant. On the other hand, some of you might say, I don't affect, impact, or influence anyone. The only one I have influence over is my family's dog, and he even ignores me sometimes. Or I'm not like your friend Andrea. People don't go anywhere or do anything because of me. I'm not an influencer at all, and I don't really want to be. Either way, the truth is this. No matter how you view your influence, it's possible that you don't realize how much you affect the people around you and how your influence can then affect the world too. We're gonna look at someone who used what they had to affect others, even though they didn't have very much. It's recorded in one of the 4 Gospels from the New Testament that tells us about Jesus' life. What we'll read today was recorded by John, who was one of Jesus' closest followers and students. In fact, when Jesus was on the cross, one of the last things he did was to ask John to care for his mother after his death. So we can read these words, knowing that they were written by an eyewitness who is trusted by Jesus. Now let me set the scene. When Jesus traveled around his 3 years of ministry, crowds almost always followed. It could have been because they heard about Jesus, wanted healing for something, or maybe they were just curious. But whatever the reason, Jesus had a lot of influence, and people were always around him. This particular day was no different. Let's pick up the story in John 6, verses 1 through 6. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is, the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he'd performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Now imagine the scene. A large crowd has gathered to see the great miracle worker, Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He asks one of his disciples, Philip, what they should do. If I were Philip, I would have been like, aren't you the one who does the miracles? Why are you asking me? But instead, Philip responds this way in verse 7. Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." In other words, you've got to be kidding me. If we're going to feed everyone, who's got the secret suitcase of cash around to make that happen? Which is a good point. I mean, can you imagine sending someone to McDonald's to order enough chicken nuggets to feed over 5,000 people? Crazy, right? The story continues in verses 8 and 9. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" So apparently only one mom in the entire village packed a lunch for her son. And Andrew thought this was worth pointing out. I mean, it was something. And something is more than enough for Jesus to go to work. Let's look at verses 10 through 14. Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who'd eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." When I read this story, all kinds of questions come up. Was it buffet style? Where did the baskets come from? How exactly did he turn 5 loaves and 2 fish into enough food to feed everyone? And who was this boy who packed the beginnings of what would become the biggest picnic ever? Now think about this boy for a second. He didn't have influence in the way we would normally think about it. He wasn't a leader, a speaker, or someone who made big decisions. He was just an ordinary person in the crowd, probably unnoticed by most. Yet he made a critical choice: to offer what he had to Jesus. It's important to see that the boy didn't perform the miracle himself. He didn't have the power or influence to feed thousands. That was Jesus's role. Jesus was the one with the power and the influence, the power and the ability to create miracles. But the boy's willingness to share what little he had set the stage for an incredible impact. His simple act of generosity became part of one of the greatest miracles ever recorded. Jesus took the loaves and fish, gave thanks, and miraculously multiplied them. Not only did everyone eat as much as they wanted, but there were even leftovers. This small act from the boy had a huge outcome, simply because he made himself available to Jesus. It wasn't his status or influence that mattered, it was his openness and generosity that led to the impact. Can you imagine how the conversation went with his mom when he got home that afternoon? There were thousands of people there, and they picked my lunch. No one, not even his mom, could have imagined things going that way, but they did. And thousands of years later, we're still telling his story. And here's what's so powerful about this moment. Jesus showed us something crucial. Influence isn't limited to people in powerful positions or with lots of followers. Significant impact often comes from simple acts of kindness, generosity, and availability. The boy's impact wasn't about what he could do on his own, but what Jesus could do through him. The only thing that mattered was that the boy brought all he had, and it was enough. Because ultimately, this is about the power of Jesus and what Jesus was capable of doing through someone who was willing to offer what he had. The same's true for us. We might feel like we have very little to offer, like the boy's small lunch, but Jesus can multiply our small actions into outcomes far bigger than we can ever imagine. Your willingness to offer kindness, to listen to someone who's struggling, or lend a hand when someone needs help can lead to incredible outcomes. You may never fully see or understand the extent of your impact, but Jesus can use what you offer in ways you never expected. When it comes to you affecting the world around you, it's all about you being willing to show up and just offer what you have. But before that's possible, you have to recognize this. You have more of an effect than you think. Imagine if the little boy listening to Jesus teach believed that he could have no effect on the situation. This little boy showed up to hear Jesus teach. He packed a lunch, and he made what he had available to be used by Jesus in a way he could have never imagined. And that's what makes this story so incredible. Besides Jesus feeding all those people with the ancient equivalent of a Happy Meal. Sometimes it's easy to look at what we have and wonder if we've got anything to bring to the table. We feel like we can't really make an impact. Those are the times when we need to remember that even the smallest thing in the hands of Jesus is more than enough. When we feel like we have nothing to bring to the table and that we don't have the potential to affect anything, there are so many stories and opportunities we may be missing out on as a result. The way we see influence needs to change. It's time we begin to realize that having influence and impact is really just being willing to do something for Jesus with what you have, no matter how big or small what you have is. In other words, having an impact isn't about doing more, having more, or knowing more people. It's about offering what you already have to those around you for something bigger. It's about choosing to believe, even when it seems unbelievable, that you have an effect on your friend group. You have an effect on your section of the band. You have an effect on your teammates. You have an effect on your siblings. You have an effect on your classmates. And then just imagine what God could do with you in the world around you. Even if that feels impossible or seems like you don't have a ton of influence, just allow your mind to consider the possibility that what Jesus did with a young boy's lunch is something he can do with you. As you think about it, here are a few steps to consider. First, identify the who. Who are the immediate people in front of you that you have the potential to impact for Jesus? Who are the people closest to you? Maybe it's your siblings, a friend, a teammate, or other people in your family. Next, identify the need. What is the need of the people around you? Is it encouragement, time, community, someone to listen, maybe someone to help them with their homework? Finally, identify what you can do to help and then do it. Now let's flip that. Before we head out, I want you to think about a person in your life who's affected you in a positive way. What was it about them that allowed them to make a difference in your life? How did their influence shape you for good? What were they willing to do, and what characteristics defined them? In the same way others have influenced you, you have the ability to influence others. That's why we have small groups, by the way. The people you're around help shape you, and you help shape them, maybe more than you think. The question isn't, do I have the ability to make an impact? Instead, it's, how will I use the influence I already have? Ultimately, God is the one who has the power to change people. All you have to do is be willing to show up, offer what you have, and ask Him to use you, and let Him do the rest.